together, it's a thing together to fight off the evil with freedom again. I'm Nathan.
And I'm Matt. And we have John here with us today on Dry Dock Talk.
And not just any John. John Parker.
The John.
The John
In
of
fact.
the Space Center. Hi, John. How are you doing today?
I am doing well.
That's good. That's good.
Yes.
We figured that since you are our first official subscriber, that we should probably interview you for why you were so darn excited about
I
all
am
of this.
so darn excited.
Hashtag subscribe.
Hashtag subscribe.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a shameless pitch there for all the rest
Shameless
of you.
plug.
On that happy note, we are really excited to have you here with us today. Talk a little bit about you, that other ghost of the Space Center up there with Charlie.
There's lots of more than just Charlie.
There are, but John, I'm pretty sure you're close to getting added to that rank.
Oh dear.
only when he dies,
That's true.
then his spirit will come back to haunt
The spirit of
Space Center.
Goose shall haunt and torment those
Oh.
for generations
We'll
to come.
definitely want to hear about Goose a little bit later on.
Yes.
But before that, let's figure out the man behind the mask.
So tell us about you, John.
So
Who are you? What do you do?
I am John Parker, the John Parker. A lot of people, and I don't understand this why, but a lot of people feel it necessary to call me just by my full, just John Parker. Especially the Bott family.
Mm-hmm.
The Bott family was very adamant that my name was not John.
It was.
It was John Parker. It was kind of funny for me. I've been working at the Space Center since 2005, which is currently over 12 and a half years, almost 13 years. This
Wow.
January
Wait,
will
wait,
be
wait,
13
wait.
years.
Wait, so you're telling me that you've been working at the Space Center longer than some of our current campers have been alive?
That is correct.
That
Wow.
is impressive.
Were you here before or after the Phoenix was built?
I came in the year that the Phoenix was built. When I first started volunteering, I started volunteering in January 2005 when the Phoenix first opened. When I first came in, the Magellan was still the old set that it was, and I remember being on the actual first camp that the Phoenix was on. That it was open for. It was David Kyle was the flight director, and Dave Damont was there as well, and we flew the mission Supernova. And I got to be the Packlid that would go up onto the bridge and play around and horse around with the kids about midway through that mission.
Wow.
Nice.
Wow, that's quite a claim to fame right
Yeah.
there. That's awesome. And you are and have been multiple times in the past in charge of the Phoenix. Is that correct?
Like set director.
I'm the current set director of the Phoenix. I was the set director for a time, and then I became the set director of the Magellan, and then I came back to the Phoenix again for the and I've been there since.
Wow. So from first flight to most current flight. That's awesome.
Well,
So-
that was just my first camp.
Okay.
The first camp that the Phoenix ever flew
Yeah.
for. I was on that staff for that very first flight.
That's awesome.
That's really cool.
How did you get involved in the Space Center in the first place?
I came in on my 5th grade field trip
Okay.
with Mr. Jacobs' class from Bonneville Elementary. I was on the Odyssey. I was the communications officer. I really, really badly wanted to be a Voyager security guard. But the way... in hindsight, Mr. Jacobs totally did this the wrong way.
Oh.
We, in our class, we had a little class money.
Mm-hmm.
And we could we bought ourselves our ticket, our position
Oh,
Wow.
really?
which is totally the very wrong way
Yep. Very much
to
so.
assign kids for that position. And me being the stingy little 5th grader, I didn't want to pay any money to have a job or whatever or something. And then so like I told myself I want to be the security guard. And the moment that like one of the security guards went up, I was like, I need to be the other one. I need to be the other one. But I didn't get to me in time. Or I thought that I could hold off a little bit longer so I could get it for cheaper, and they ended up not getting it.
Oh.
So I was and then after that was taken, I was like, well, I don't care what I am at this point. So I just waited till it was free, and then I just picked a job. I was the Odyssey communications officer. We did the mission Supernova. I am like 70% sure that Chris Call was our flight director.
Wow. Okay.
And we did the mission Supernova. I don't really remember that much about it. I remember that we had a Minoc on our ship.
What is a
Minoc?
Minoc?
Minoc is well, for those of who like the like a Targ
Yeah.
or a Drashnok. It's just an alien creature of some kind. I remember imagining it as like a stingray type looking thing, based off of the description that it was given to us or something.
Wow.
So I was imagining like this stingray type thing, and I don't know how they did this, but I feel like they were hitting the side of the ship, not where the classroom was, like on the side of the ship where the library was.
Oh, really?
And so I don't know how they did that. It might have been just my little imagination running wild. But I remember we had a Minoc on our ship. I remember that we were trying to yell at the Romulan that the star was going to explode. And lo and behold, when it did explode, we died because our shields were not raised when the supernova shockwave hit us. And we were very adamant that the shield button wasn't working. And we were like, we were clicking it and it wasn't activating. And Chris, this is how I'm pretty sure it was Chris Call that was our flight director. He onlined the station, and said, okay, click raise shields. And lo and behold, of course, then when we clicked raise shields, it raised the shields.
Ooh, smart flight director right there.
And so we're like, no, it wasn't working during the mission. You don't understand. So we were like, stupid thing didn't work or anything like that. But so we did that mission. I remember Mrs. Houston was teaching the classroom. This was back when we were still very, like, for the first time putting rovers on Mars. And so we were talking about the Mars rover and, like, what went into designing it. And I remember laughing really hard because they had, like, two little, almost like Kinect little things.
Like the building block
Like the
type
little
things?
building block things. They were called Kinects.
Okay.
And if you're really old, you know what those are.
Uh-huh.
One of them was like a walking like robot, and then the other one was a rover. And they tested them. They had them go from one end of the table to the next, and like a third of the way down, the walking one fell over. And so we're like, okay, well, stand it back up, and we stood it back up, and it like went for like another little bit, and then fell back over again. And then I remember Mrs. Houston saying like, okay, this is why we have a rover. Because if we had a robot that was walking on Mars, who's gonna pick him up? Because we can't send out another person to go and pick him up. It's not how it works.
You remember all of this in incredible detail.
Yes,
Wow.
and and I remember also we went into the Stardome. It was the old
those
Stardome.
old one with like the little lamp and the holes in it.
with the cylinders and whatnot.
Yeah.
And I remember them saying like, okay, we're going to move the stars and you will get sick. And I was like, I'm not going to oh, geez. It was the most disorienting thing I've ever experienced in my life. Because we were in a dark room and then the room shifted and it was just weird.
Wow.
But yeah, that's what I remember from my 5th grade field trip.
Wow.
So how did you get from that to volunteering?
So from there, in the 6th grade, I wanted to go on an overnight camp for my birthday. That was one of my birthday presents. Is I got to go just by myself, no other friends required, to go on an overnight camp. And I went on an overnight camp, and I did the mission Red October in the Magellan.
Oh, wow.
And Ryan Billings was our flight director. I was so bitter at him because we were in Discovery.
What position were you?
I was chief of operations.
Okay.
But I really wanted to be security because I didn't get to be security when I was not here. And I was listening to instructions. So what it was is, when we were selecting out jobs, he went over all of the jobs, and then he said, okay, when I say go, I want everyone to line up along the wall over here. And then when it reaches you, you're going to, come up with your rank paper, and you're going to tell me what job you want. So you'll line up over here, and, by order of rank, and if you're the same rank, whoever got there first is at the front of the line. And he's like, okay, and then everyone stood up and went over. But me, being the nice, good child that I was like, he didn't say okay, he didn't say go yet. I'm going to sit here until he says go, and then he's going to be like, you followed instruction, and then give me a pat on the back or let me be at the front or something. I was like, I'm going to be rewarded for following instruction. I know it. And everyone's over on the side, and he looks at me and says, go, and I was like, hee, or whatever, but he didn't say anything else besides that. And so I was at the back of the lieutenant junior grades. And two or three people before me chose the security guards. So I was the chief of operations officer when I went, and I was super, super upset.
I have no sympathy. I'm sorry.
But yeah.
Did you ever, on any other missions, get to be the security officer?
I did not. Actually, before, I didn't do any other camps besides that one overnighter.
From there, the seed was planted, you were hooked?
The seed was planted, I was hooked. I really wanted to come and volunteer, and I signed up and I put in volunteer paperwork. But shortly after I put in my volunteer paperwork and I got accepted, my grandma had a stroke. And she came to live with us, and someone needed to be at home with her all the time. And me being the youngest child, it was chosen to be me. So I didn't get to volunteer when I first applied, because when I first applied, I was actually still only 11 or 12 years old. So I spent a number of years grandma sitting. It was really funny. The doctor said, "Oh, she's not gonna last, a week or two," and then 2.5 years, 3 strokes later, she finally died.
Wow,
it's quite the resilient grandmother that you have there.
So and then after that happened, then I had a friend who was volunteering here at the time, Taylor Thomas, who was a Galileo flight director. When he stopped working here, he was a Galileo flight director. He was volunteering here as well, and he's like, "Hey, he was talking about the Space Center, and it reminded me that I had applied for it at some point, because it'd been 3 years or so, and so I said oh my goodness, yeah, I remember I applied for that, and I kind of got in. And he's like, dude, you should come back. And so I called up Mr. Williamson, and I was like, hi, my name's John. At one point in time, I was going to be a person, and then I couldn't be, but I was accepted. Could I still come back and volunteer? And he's like, yeah, sure. Let me look up your records. I doubt that he was looking at my records at all, and he was just saying yes, but I don't know. I can neither confirm nor deny that was something that he actually did. And so then I started volunteering.
Wow. And so what have you done since volunteering then? You mentioned that you were the set director of the Phoenix right now.
So I started volunteering, and I was just your regular old, volunteer. A lot of people, there's this cult following that believes that I was never a black shirt, that I just was born into this world as the assistant director of the Space Center, but that is not true.
So
I volunteered for a number of years, and then I
really quickly.
Yeah.
Were you ever I think they were called the Voyager, like with a red shirt, or was it just only the black shirt program? At that
So
point in time?
I came in at the very end of the Pioneer program.
Okay,
it was
yeah.
Pioneers. I do have my red Pioneer shirt.
Wow.
And then shortly
Those are rare.
thereafter, it became just the Voyagers. So I got my black shirt shortly after my starting volunteering.
Mm-hmm.
I was probably one of the last people to get a Pioneer shirt.
Yeah.
And then everyone after that just became a Voyager. So I started volunteering, and then I became a supervisor pretty quickly because I got in on the internship program at my school.
Oh.
So I internshipped and got a lot of experience supervising at that point in the Voyager, and then I got my passes in the Magellan. And then from there, I mostly supervised I supervised a little bit in the Magellan when I first got my blue shirt.
Mm-hmm.
But then I got into the Voyager, and I got really good in the Voyager, and I just stayed there. And then for a while, I was the head Voyager supervisor. I came up with the supervisor, your supervisor could supervise like manual, which is based off the title came from an Old Spice commercial with the man your man could smell like, but it was the supervisor your supervisor could supervise
I
like.
remember reading through that when I was going for my Voyager passes.
Yes.
Wow.
It was a super funny, super cool just thing that I typed up to help people who had gotten a lot of passes or whatever and wanted to become supervisors, teach them everything that they needed to know to become a supervisor, at least in the Voyager. Because at that time I had become very disconnected from the Magellan. Because I had just been supervising exclusively in the Voyager for probably about a year and a half to 2 years at that point.
Wow.
And then one summer, after we were flying Canada that summer with Emily Paxman, Emily Perry at the time, and at one point in time, I just looked over to her and I was like, "Hey, Emily, can I learn to fly?" And she looked at me with this look of why haven't we talked about this before? And it was just and she's like, yeah, yeah, for sure, And then I learned how to fly the Voyager because I actually had gotten some flight experience in the Phoenix as well. From day flights and other things. I actually got passed off to become a Phoenix flight director, but then I spent a lot more time in the Voyager and stopped kind of flying in the Phoenix.
So you had flown a bit in the Phoenix.
So I'd flown a bit in the Phoenix, and then I was supervising for a super long time because there wasn't really a need for me to fly in the Phoenix at the time. Megan, Alex, Bracken, Dave was there. There was a lot of Phoenix flight directors, so there really wasn't a need for me there. There was a bigger need for me in the Voyager as the head supervisor there. So I started supervising again, and then I flew in the Voyager for a long time. I was super close to actually convincing Mr. Williamson to actually make me the set director of the Voyager.
Oh, really?
And pass the mic to me.
Wow.
Because it was just shortly before the close. We were all talking in the office, and we were just talking about how the Voyager was going to run and operate in the fall and things like that, And we basically had agreed that I would be flying the Voyager almost exclusively for every overnight camp, and that I would be doing a lot of different responsibilities of what the Voyager set director would do.
Wow.
And and Megan Warner was there, and she can attest to this. It was really funny. So I looked at him and I said, "Does that mean that you're going to pass the mic to me?" And he was typing up an email, and he stopped, paused for what seemed to be an eternity. It was probably about a second and a half, and then looked at me and said,